We
Yeah.
moved up. We were planning on moving to Portland. I got a job working for Mr. Sun Solar here in Portland, and then he told me, Tom, go across the river and get way more bang for your buck. So
Mhm.
on Friday, we went to a realtor down in Washougal in Washington, and we got the list of properties.
Mhm.
So we had looked at one place the night before. It was supposed to be 10 acres. It was like a tiny 50 by 80-foot section with a steep hill behind it. So we go, this ain't gonna
Mm.
work. So
Yeah.
we decided to drive over up the 5, and we looked at another place close to the freeway. And the third place we looked at was where we ended up. My wife was kind of skeptical. She says, oh, it's all electrical. We kind of want gas. And I go, well, let's go look at it anyways.
Mhm.
Well, what it was it was a nursery, a running nursery that was going to be sold for as a nursery. And when we saw it, it was at 100 on the list. It was 180.
Mhm.
We went and talked to the guy. He was there when we went and looked at the property, and we bought
Mhm.
it that night. He said the day before he went from 230 to 180, and we bought it the next day.
Perfect.
It took us a while for everything to be finalized, and the prices were going up, and people were giving him bigger offers. And my wife, in total Paula fashion, called the state of Washington, the realty board, and said, hey, what can you do about this? We've already signed the paperwork, everything, and they're trying to push this out. And
Mm.
the Washington realty board jumped in and, said they told them they can't do it, that we had already signed the paperwork. And we bought the property here
Mhm.
in Brush Prairie, Washington, and we moved in 04 of 04 of 04. So yeah, it was.
Wow.
We've been here ever since. It was a full blown nursery, so it had everything I dreamt of.
Oh my
I
gosh.
literally, I literally visualized this place and been doing visualization practices, and all this place popped up. It had 500-foot greenhouses.
Ah.
It had 2 wells. It had 2.5-inch main lines. There was like direct burial electrical everywhere, like in with the 2-inch main lines. So, when I got there, everything was 2 feet tall and in pots for the most part. There was a lot of plants. Um, Also, just in the ground, like forest areas and the pines and stuff like that. And they were all about a couple feet. Now I'm harvesting the trees. I'm going, one day I'll be able to harvest the trees and thin them out and use them for firewood. So now, 20 something years later, I'm harvesting the trees and using it for firewood. And so it kind of laid out everything perfectly for what was coming down the road.
Amazing.
So I love to grow everything and anything. And I was growing vegetables, and I had a CSA. So I was going into Portland all the time, delivering vegetables to different families. And one of them was a typical Portland community a young family household where there was like 3 families, and they all had a bunch of kids there. And when I would deliver, kids would come up and go, Farmer Tom's here, Farmer Tom's here. They would like lose their minds. And at the same time, I'm started going to the medical marijuana farmers markets here in Washington, and a couple of the other guys there were showing Farmer John 420 and Joe Parker were starting to show their pictures of their grows. And so, and back then we all had aliases. So I kind of ran with Farmer Tom. I go, well, it's Farmer Tom. So I kind of ran with it. And, that was my Facebook name forever until they forced me to change it. And that opened up a lot of doors. I started working with Zane. With Zane, she worked at the Columbia newspaper, and I just was open to my doors. For me in life, when everybody's going right, I was going left. I never was a sheeple and following the crowd. I was going to go do my own thing in the other direction. So that's kind of what I did with cannabis too. I stayed medical, and after we voted it in Washington State, everybody was just trying to cash in as quick as possible on the gray black market. The traditional legacy growers were just doing their thing and just trying to move as much possible and rat hole as much money as they could. And we just opened our farm up to advocacy, the advocates and the media, and really showed everybody everything when nobody was showing anybody anything.
Right.
And then 2014 comes around, and the state legislator, they're trying to make their minds up about concentrates, and their plan was to turn it all into edibles, because at that time we were having BHO explosions all across the Pacific Northwest. So we were having these explosions because, I don't know if you know anything about butane extraction, but the butane pools on the ground, and any kind of spark from like plugging a plug into the wall to a pilot light to somebody lighting up a cigarettes, it's boom, people were dying, people were getting seriously injured, houses were literally being lifted off their foundation from these explosions.
Oh my.
And I'd spent enough time working with government agencies, even at that point, that you really need to spoon feed the government officials to educate them. So in San Diego, we were educating the city council, and then here I am educating the state legislators on cannabis, because they really didn't know. So Matt Markovich calls me from Como News. I'd done a bunch of pieces with them up there on legal cannabis, and he said, "Hey Tom, will you do an open blast?" So that's like the old school way before the closed loop systems, where you basically bought some butane and a glass tube and stuffed it full of your cannabis. And, you basically needed, a piece of Pyrex, a little heating pad, your cans of butane, coffee filter, zip tie, and you were in business. So it was under $100. So when we did the piece, I told Matt, well, I think we're going to do something a little different. I can do the open blast for you, but what I'd rather do is do a 3-hour symposium on everything concentrates, because we really need to educate these lawmakers while they're making decisions on what's really going on. So I invited all my friends in, Jonah Tacoma, Farmer Joe Parker, all of us got together, Jeremy John Robbins. We all got together, and I told everybody, you need to take off your big hats. We're not looking like gangsters. We're professional cannabis people. Yes. And so we took off our hat, and I said, here's our story. I want everybody to say the same thing. If we don't tax it and regulate it, it's $100 fix, and people will continue to blow themselves up. And that's what the regulators are afraid of. They don't want, they thought by criminalizing it that people would stop. No, people aren't going to stop. You're still going to see explosions.
Right.
So it went on the news. It was probably one of the only pro BHO concentrate news pieces that ever was out there, because that's what we told them. And then they had the top guy out of the Liquor Control Board in San Diego on the other side talking about it, and within a week they changed their minds.
Wow.
And they listened to us. So there's pictures of it right there of Joe Parker holding up the piece of oil, and that oil there, that was a part of what we used. So I had Joe Parker in there doing his closed loop system. He had an early Bogart closed loop system, and we were showing him about a bubble hash and RSO, and we were showing him about the different types of concentrates. That all isn't BHO. There's many different types. And, again, if you don't legalize it and tax it, we'll still have all of these. We're still going to have all these explosions and all these problems. So they changed it. And then a few months later, I got a call from NBC News. They wanted to come and do a piece on the regulated cannabis market. I'd done a couple other pieces too. I did a weed maps piece for opening day of cannabis with Gil from Weed Maps, and Gil always told me, he said, "Man, they want to see big plants and like you're going through a jungle." So he gave me a lot of good early tips back then. And so I had, from doing all these news pieces, the union who was petitioning here to unionize cannabis workers here in the state, they pulled me aside and they said, "Hey, there's an opportunity here, and we think you and your wife are the perfect people to go ahead and work with the federal government. Are you open to that and do the first federally funded cannabis study?" And I said, "Oh, heck yeah, I'm all about it."
Wow.
So in June that year, I got on the phone with 10 agents from the CDC, and they, first thing I asked them, "Well, where are you getting your information?" They said, "Oh, we're getting it off YouTube." And I said, whoa. That's really not fair to cannabis people who've been doing it a long time. Why don't I'll take you on a tour of all these facilities my friends own and run. And they go, "You do that?" I said, "Oh, heck yeah, for sure." So I kind of organized it. And then they came back and said, "Well, our law team said we can't do that. But what we can do is make your farm a secure location where federal agents can learn, touch, and study cannabis.
Wow.
Are you open to that?" And I said, "Heck yeah." They go, "Well, we're going to have to do a full background check." Yeah. I go, "Look, we've got nothing to hide. Me and my wife we stay in our lane. We're medical growers taking care of medical patients. I'm not mailing anything. I'm not running hundreds of pounds across the country. I'm not doing anything. We stay in our lane. We do what we do. We grow cannabis for patients." And we've kind of taken that CSA model back then into cannabis. So people would give us money up front to get started in springtime. And then we'd ask they could come and visit the plants because we believe in the people who are consuming to interact with the plants. And we would ask for them if they had any special things that kind of had their energy in it that we would hang up in the greenhouses. And they said, "Oh, yeah." So we would do that. And then come October, we would dry everything and they would get theirs, and always about twice as much as what they paid for. And so we did that for a couple of years. And then when the feds came, so back to the Fed story.
Yeah.
We came in October, on August 10th and 11th of 2015, we had them on our farm for 2 days.
Wow.
When James from NIASH, CDC NIASH, came to the farm, we'd been talking on the phone, so we became friends. So I gave him a big old Farmer Tom bear hug, and we shook hands and welcomed him to our farm. And this is the education day, so I thought, man, I have one chance to do something, and I'm going to do it. Bound and determined to do it. So what I thought about is, look, after me, they went to the Mayo Clinic, and then they were going to go to big, huge, multi-state operators after that. And I go, nobody else will do this. Uh-huh. So during the education day, nobody else got the opportunity to educate them for the first time. So we consume cannabis around them all day long. We just to show them that this wasn't heroin, this isn't meth, this isn't LSD. We can put our sentences together. We can give them a really good deep dive into everything. I brought the top processors, the top concentrate makers, the top labs. I brought everybody in, and for the educational part, And then we did dabs in front of them and rolled joints in front of them too. They didn't want to be in the camera because they didn't want to get the kibosh put on them, but we educated them for 2 days. They even go, I go, well, come on, we're going to go have pizza. And, my friends have a brewery down in downtown Vancouver. Let's go. And so they went with us. And, these are all triple PhD guys who are into health and workplace health and safety. So they got to see us cannabis consumers as we really are in our environment, what we're doing every day. So they got to see it all, and these guys are still my friends to this day. Up until last year, they would call me and ask me, "Oh, we want to check out this hemp operation. Can you find somebody willing to work with us? Can you do this for us?" And I would always say, "Yeah, it didn't pay, but yeah. I really wanted to normalize cannabis. For me, it really hasn't been all about the money." So go back up to the cover right there. So go down.
Go down. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the scientific study that they did on our farm. They called me an organic farm. They go, "Can we take soil samples and water samples and see all of the inputs that you're using?" And I said, "Oh, for sure." So they took soil samples and they, sent them back to the lab and analyzed them and verified that I was an organic farm, that I was using organic inputs, and there's no harsh chemicals anywhere, on our property. So when they came to the farm, we did the education day. That went great. They got a lot of data. And then they came back in October and they wanted to document us harvesting. So we were cutting the plants down, we were big leafing, we were hanging dry, and I had products in every stage. So I had one greenhouse that needed to be harvested. I had products that I had already harvested early. Some were drying and some were ready for curing. So they had us on the first day, it was harvesting and big leafing. The second day was taking all the buds off of the plant, off of the stems.
Right.
And then the third day was trimming, and then finally it was nitrogen sealing. So we had nitrogen sealers here, and we had a sealer where it sucked the air out and it would seal it up. So they documented that part of it.
Beautiful.
So so this study is a federally funded study. And it's in the Library of Congress, which is probably one of my proudest accomplishments. In the study, we got the federal government, from what we understand, one of the first times, if not the first time, we got the federal government to use the word cannabis instead of marijuana in a study. And in that, when you open it up, you can download it and look at it sometime. But in there, it says, cannabis, known as marijuana, and then they use cannabis through the whole study, which and we went back and forth with them. I'm going, "Look, you guys are the premier scientists in the world for workplace health and safety, and you need to use the proper terminology. You can't be using marijuana, a Hispanic slang term out there, to tell the rest of the scientists around the world who are using the proper terminology. It's going to make you guys look bad. And I don't want to make you guys look bad, because all that means is I didn't do a very good job of educating you." And James said to me, "Tom, you never used the word marijuana once." And the whole time it was always cannabis, 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 cannabis. And I got flack for, you're going to get flack for everything these days out in the industry. People were getting on my feet. Farmer Tom, we fought to use the word marijuana, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going, well, you weren't in the situation that I was. These are federal scientists, and I want them to use the proper terminology. I didn't want them to look like they weren't very well educated, because that would have been a direct reflection on me. So and
Coming
then
from the
getting it
military, I know how that is. It's like, come on, you do the right thing. I'm your squad leader, so don't make me look stupid.
right.
Don't make yourself look stupid, and don't make me look stupid.
Right. So they had a difficult time getting it out. So they put it out, and then it came down like the next day because it was 90. What was it? 2006, and they were having the election that year, and the Democrat and the senators didn't want it to be out there that that Democrats were pro cannabis.
Right.
So, and then it waited a little while, and then Trump came in office, and there was a big stack of. I'm assuming all of this. There was a big stack that needed to be signed by the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, and they just went through and signed them all.
Yeah.
And then next morning, 6 a.m., they overnighted me early AM delivery, a stack of the finished reports. Because once the public has it, then it's out there and it can't be taken back and they can't shut it down. Yep. So they got it through, and those were exciting times in my life, and that kind of launched me. I was already big in Washington State, and I've been on NBC Nightly News and on Squawk Box and 50 different publications and countless. Got a couple little bio videos on me out there, and it's been a wild ride. And then I knew I didn't want to get into the regulated market. And the media, when they came to Washington, they always wanted to talk to me, and this would piss the regulated I-502 market guys. It would just piss them off to no end. And they go, "Why do you keep going to Farmer Tom? Why do you keep going to Farmer Tom?" And I had no intention, because I was listening to the smartest guys in the room, like Dr. Dominic Corman, Dr. Jim McGray, and they're all saying, "Dude, just hold on. It's going to be a race to the bottom." Remember that piece you did with NBC? It was Washington, after 6 months, has too much weed. You would think all the rest of the states would catch on and take note and go, "Oh, we're only going to allow each grow to produce this much." Right? But they didn't learn anything. Washington was one of the first two states, Washington and Colorado, and they still haven't learned their lessons. A year after every state goes legally, head of the news. Mississippi has too much. Michigan has too much cannabis. New York has too much. It just goes state by state by state by state.
Right.
And so I after that I got into hemp, became a big deal, and people were selling pre-rolls of hemp and quality flowers. So that picture, I had started a school called Hemp Farming Academy, where we taught people to grow at scale quality cannabis.
Beautiful.
And that lasted for a few years. I think we closed it down a year or two ago. Well, hemp just wasn't as popular, and we weren't able to keep up with the yearly bill that we got from some educational platform. I won't name them. I don't want to do anything like that. But so I started educating people. I spoke at Hemp University. I spoke like all over the place. So in 2020, I was doing a across the country tour, Hemp Farming 101, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what I learned in between 2019 and 2020 is that there was a lot of scoundrels out there, people who would take advantage and rip off farmers who put their whole life savings into it. And across Oregon, we saw multiple, like double-digit suicides because they had lost everything.
Oh my God.
And in that first year, it rained like a dog, and it was Yeah, it was a mess.
Oh my
And
god.
so I did Ashland, and then I went to Salt Lake City. I went to New Mexico. I went to Puerto Rico, came back, went to Puerto Rico. They had called COVID, so I was stuck in Puerto Rico for a couple months. Then I went to, let's see. Oh, I got back from Puerto Rico, and then that's when I went down and did that big grow. So, but from the last couple of years, I just basically been treading water to
Right.
see what was next. And I do a lot of consulting, and people bring me in, and there's a lot of data mining that go out there. They say, oh, we're going to do this and this and this for you, knowing that I'm a nice guy and I'm going to tell them everything without them forking out any cash. That's kind of part of their business plan out there. So I've seen it many times. Now I insist I get paid up front, or I ain't helping you at all.
There you go, Farmer Tom.
So
pay for that expertise.
that leads us to this slide leads us to the highlight, Irvine Labs. In February, I met Sean Land from Irvine Labs, and we started working together. He's a Schedule 1 bulk manufacturer. That means we can create products for Schedule 1, which is cannabis and mushrooms and mescaline and peyote and you name all the Schedule 1 drugs out there. And he hired me on as director of production and manufacturing. We work together. We're turning on the lights and getting things prepped. We're in the developmental stage of opening up our operation and distributing medical grade West Coast USA cannabis and mushroom for pharmacies around the world. So
Wow.
this is part of the licenses. We can grow, process. We can grow, process, do research, do studies. Run through things through the FDA and finish all the way up to finished product. Plus, we have an import-export license. So, it's been a wild ride. For me, it's full circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I started off with my Folgers coffee can of weed and rolling joints and selling the joints, always being medicinal for me.
Mm-hmm.
Through the medical deal with Prop 215, still in medical when I go to Washington and educate government agencies up on here to make logical decisions.
Right.
Now all the way to, the way I look at it is once the piece of work, the study, the HHE from the CDC was in the Library of Congress, there was only one place else to go. I knew I didn't want to get in the regulated market because the writing's been on the wall since before it happened. It was going to be a race to the bottom. All the mom and pops were going to lose everything. And, I didn't want to lose. I was one of the first people to put his name and likeness on a cannabis product. And, I've had Marvel Comics, and the guy from Nike did my first artwork. And so I had all these early opportunities since we were the first dates, and it's come full circle to now I'm a director of production and manufacturing for a pharmaceutical company. Like, who would have thought such a thing, right? Not only a pharmaceutical company, but a Schedule 1 bulk manufacturer, which gives us all the options of a regular pharmaceutical, except we can work with Schedule 1 products and create Schedule 1 products and ship mushrooms and ship cannabis around the world to agencies that are allowed, like pharmacies, to accept them. So, man, it's been a wild ride. I couldn't be more tickled on, how far we've came, me and my wife, Paula. I mean, she's like my rock, my backbone. She always tells me it doesn't take much to be professional. So I do everything professional. I always play within the guidelines that we all voted in.
Exactly.
And, that's given me the opportunity first to work with the federal government and now to work for a pharmaceutical company. So, wow.
Wow.
It's kind of scary to even talk about it. You know what I mean?
Well, if
I mean,
anybody's
it's a
going
little
to
overwhelming for me to like recall it all and, and think about it all and see how far I've come. And, I've got a little tear in my eye right now when I see how far this whole thing has gone.
Well, if anybody's going to wear that hat, it should be you, Farmer Tom, for sure. Hey, it's been a joy and a privilege to have you on today. I can't wait to push this out to the general public. It's a huge announcement, and I wish you the best, sir. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Holly. It's been a pleasure. And if you ever want me back, just give me a call.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, until next time, stay safe out there, folks.